I'm 70 years old, and the word that scares me most isn't death. It's inconvenient. You don't hear it spoken out loud, but you feel it when people start planning around you instead of with you. When your name turns into a topic. When love comes with conditions no one admits exist. Maybe you're listening right now because some part of you recognizes that feeling. I didn't at first. I thought I was just tired. Then I realized I was afraid. Afraid that one day I'd still be alive, still breathing, and already quietly set aside. And that fear is what made me tell my children I was broke. Before you judge me, you should know who I was to them. I worked most of my life with my hands. Construction, contracting, whatever kept the lights on. I wasn't rich in the way magazines mean rich, but I had something better. I was reliable. I paid for college. I helped with weddings. I covered emergencies that somehow kept happening to the same people. Every time someone said, "Dad, I hate to ask," I said yes before they finished the sentence. I told myself that was love. What I didn't admit was that it also bought silence. It bought peace. It made sure no one asked what I needed. After my wife died, that habit hardened. Ellen had been the one who noticed things, when I was quiet, when I was hurting. Without her, I filled the empty space by being useful. I fixed problems. I wrote checks. I made sure no one worried about me. And slowly, without meaning to, I taught my children a simple rule: as long as Dad can help, Dad is fine. The night I decided to stop, there wasn't a dramatic moment. No argument. No breakdown. I was sitting alone at my kitchen table, the same table where birthdays had been celebrated and arguments settled, and I realized something that made my stomach drop. If I disappeared tomorrow, my children would lose support. But if my money disappeared while I stayed, I wasn't sure what they'd lose. That's the choice I faced. Keep playing the role I trained them to expect, or step out of it and see what was left. I didn't feel brave. I felt tired. Tired enough to risk being seen differently. I called them one by one. I didn't say I was testing them. I didn't even say I was scared. I just told the truth, or part of it. I can't help financially anymore, I said. I might need help myself. The silence on the other end of the line told me more than words ever could. My daughter asked questions like she was solving a problem, not talking to her father. My oldest son told me I should have planned better. His wife didn't realize I could hear her when she said it, but I did. We assumed he wouldn't be a burden. A burden. Not angry. Not ungrateful. Just inconvenient. I nodded to an empty kitchen when the call ended, like someone had explained the rules of a game I didn't know I was playing. By the time I spoke to my youngest, my voice didn't sound like my own. He didn't rush to comfort me. He didn't apologize. He said something worse and more honest. "I always thought you'd be okay," he said. "I guess I used that as an excuse to stay away." When he came over that night, he stood in the doorway like a guest, not a son. He didn't promise anything. He didn't even say it would be fine. He just said, "If it gets bad, you won't be alone." I should tell you that gave me peace. It didn't. It gave me clarity. Because when he left, my phone lit up with a group message I hadn't been in before. Someone had named it Dad's situation. I stared at those words longer than I cared to admit. Situation. Not father. Not man. A situation to be managed. And that's when something inside me finally gave way. Not anger. Not sadness. Control. I realized I had already become what I feared, and I hadn't even finished telling the story yet. I could explain. I could correct them. Or I could stay silent and see how deep this went. I stood alone in that kitchen and understood something cold and final. Once you stop being useful, people don't ask how you feel. And I wasn't ready to stop listening yet. The first message came at 6:12 a.m., before the sun reached my kitchen window. "Dad, it's Marlene. Call me when you wake up. We need to talk about everything." You know that tone, soft, organized, already moving pieces on a board you didn't agree to play. I stood there with my coffee cooling in my hand, staring at my phone like it was a mirror. Part of me wanted to call right back, clear the air, tell them I was fine. The other part, the part that had read, Dad's situation, on my screen the night before, wanted to see what they would do next if I didn't rescue them from their discomfort. That was my first real choice after I told them I was broke: take the wheel again, or stay quiet long enough to learn the truth. I didn't call back. Not yet. Instead, I put on a clean shirt, grabbed my keys, and drove to the park where Ellen and I used to walk on Sundays. The benches were wet with dew. A few men my age were there already, shuffling slowly, feeding birds like it was a job they'd been assigned. I sat down and listened to the wind in the bare branches. Then I heard a voice behind me. "You look like you're waiting for someone who isn't coming." I turned and saw her, silver hair pulled back, a scarf the color of autumn leaves. Lorraine. The same calm eyes I'd noticed at the diner. "I'm not waiting," I said. "Just sitting. Men say that when they're trying not to fall apart," she replied, and sat a polite distance away. No flirting. No pity. Just presence. Lorraine didn't press. She watched a dog chase a stick, then said, "My husband used to fix everything. When he got sick, people still came around, until he stopped being useful." Useful. That word landed like a stone. "I'm Henry," I said quietly. "I know," she answered, glancing at my phone as it buzzed in my pocket. "They keep calling? I told them I can't help financially anymore." Lorraine's eyes didn't widen. "And now you're being managed." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Exactly. Be careful," she said. "If you're looking for love, you might only find guilt." That sentence followed me home. I had 3 missed calls and a text from Rick: "We need to meet today. Bring your paperwork." Paperwork. Like I was applying for a loan. I stared at the message and felt pride rise in my chest, the old instinct to smooth things over. I could ignore them. I could also go and let them see my face, let them remember I wasn't a file. But if I went, I'd have to sit there and take whatever version of me they'd already decided on. I went anyway. We met at Rick's house. His driveway was full, his truck, Dana's SUV, Marlene's neat little sedan. The fact that they'd coordinated without me wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how relieved they looked when I arrived, like the problem had finally shown up. Dana opened the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hi, Henry. Come in." In the living room, Marlene had a yellow legal pad on her lap. Rick stood by the window with his arms crossed. Nobody offered me a seat at first. I took one anyway, lowering myself onto the edge of the couch like a man who might be asked to leave. Marlene started. "Okay. So, we've been talking." I waited. "We need to understand your situation," she said. "Are you in debt? Is there anything we don't know about?" Rick added, "Because if this is about you losing money, we can't have it ripple into us." Into us. Not into the family. Into us. Dana leaned forward. "We assumed you had saved enough," she said, as if she were reading from an insurance brochure. "We assumed you wouldn't be a burden." There it was, spoken in daylight, not whispered. My ears rang. For a moment I couldn't feel my hands. And here's the choice I faced in that living room. I could defend myself, list every check I'd ever written, every night I'd driven through snow because someone needed me. I could make them small with facts. Or I could sit in the discomfort and watch what they did when I didn't play the role. So I swallowed my pride and said, "I don't have paperwork." Marlene blinked. "What do you mean you don't have paperwork?" "I mean," I said slowly, "I'm not here to prove anything. I'm here because you asked to see me." Rick's jaw tightened. "Dad, this isn't personal. It's practical." That line, people use it when they're about to be cruel without admitting it, cut deeper than the word burden. Then Tommy spoke from the corner, voice rough. "Maybe we should ask him if he's okay." Marlene gave a short, dismissive laugh. "Okay isn't the issue, Tommy. The issue is what we're supposed to do." Tommy's face flushed. He looked at me, and for a second I saw the boy he used to be, eager to please, terrified to disappoint. Then he said, "If this is real, you can stay with me. But I can't keep showing up only when you're falling apart either." The room went still. His words weren't gentle. They weren't heroic. They were honest, and they made my throat tighten, because they sounded like a man deciding whether to change or stay the same. I stood up. "I appreciate the offers," I said. "All of them." Rick frowned. "So what's the plan?" And that's when the coldest truth slipped out before I could soften it. "The plan," I said, "is for me to go home. Alone. And for you to decide whether you call me because you love me, or because you're afraid." No one answered. I walked out with my coat still on the chair, my hands shaking, my heart oddly steady. In the car, I sat for a long time, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't look like a burden. I looked like a man who had given too much and asked for too little. When my phone buzzed again, I expected another message from the group. Instead, it was Lorraine. A simple text: "If you want company tonight, I'll be at the park bench at 7. No questions." I read it twice. And for the first time since this started, I felt the story shift, not toward forgiveness, not toward revenge, but towards something I hadn't planned for. A choice that wasn't about money at all. I sat there with that invitation glowing on the screen and felt another choice form, quieter than the one in Rick's living room. If I went to that bench, it would mean admitting I couldn't carry this alone. It would mean letting a stranger see me unarmored, the way Ellen used to see me when I'd come home exhausted and pretend I wasn't. But if I didn't go, I knew exactly what would happen. I'd go back to my empty house, pour a drink I didn't want, and rehearse speeches to children who weren't listening. In my mirror I looked older than I felt. Not weak, just exposed. And for the first time I wondered if the real test wasn't my kids at all. Maybe it was whether I could accept help without buying it. At 6:59 p.m. I stood on my porch with my keys in my fist, staring at the dark street like it might argue back. Inside, the house was warm and quiet. Outside, the air bit at my cheeks and the world kept moving without me. I could still hear my daughter's voice from that morning, soft, efficient, already filing me under. Problem. I could still see that group chat name from the night before, Dad's situation. If you've ever felt yourself turning into a category instead of a person, you know how it rearranges your insides. You start weighing every step, every call, every breath, like you're trying not to take up space. Lorraine's text had been short: park bench. 7. No questions. That was the choice. Stay home and let pride keep me company, or sit on a bench and admit I didn't want to be alone with my own thoughts. I wish I could tell you I chose the brave option. I chose the option that hurt less than the silence. Ellen used to say loneliness isn't the absence of people, it's the absence of being known. After she died, the house had plenty of absence. The park was nearly empty. One street lamp threw a pale circle onto the bench, and Lorraine was already there, scarf tucked under her chin, hands folded like she'd been waiting all her life without making anyone feel rushed. She didn't stand up. She didn't fuss. She just looked at me and said, "You came." I almost didn't, I told her. I stood at my door arguing with myself. Lorraine patted the space beside her. "Sit. Old men shouldn't do their suffering in doorways." I sat, leaving a respectful gap. For a minute we listened to the wind scrape through bare branches. The silence wasn't empty the way it is in a house. It was shared. Lorraine smelled faintly of laundry soap and winter air, ordinary, and somehow that made it easier to breathe. "How bad was it?" she asked. "They asked for paperwork," I said, and my mouth twisted. Like I was applying for a loan. Lorraine nodded once, calm but not surprised. "And you?" "I told them I didn't have paperwork." I looked down at my hands. "I told them I'm not here to prove anything. I'm their father." Her eyes stayed on the path ahead. "Did it help?" "No," I said. "It showed me what they see when they look at me." I didn't repeat the worst part at first. The word Dana used. Burden. The way she said it like it was a reasonable assumption, like being old was a contract I'd violated. Lorraine seemed to hear what I didn't say. Somebody used that word, she said quietly. Didn't they? I nodded. Lorraine's fingers brushed my sleeve, barely a touch, more permission than comfort. I'm sorry, she said, and didn't add anything cheap after it. Then she asked, Do you love your children, Henry? Of course, I said too fast. Do you like them? She asked. That second question landed like cold water. I stared at the dark grass until my throat tightened. I don't know anymore, I admitted. I love them. I'm proud of them. But I don't like who we become around money. Around need. Lorraine's voice didn't soften. Then stop paying for that version of the relationship. I let out a breath. I don't know how. I've been the solution my whole life. And now? She said. Now they're trying to place me. I answered, and my phone buzzed as if to prove it. Marlene, Dad, we found options. Assisted living. We need to move quickly. Options. Move quickly. Like I was a refrigerator that stopped working. Lorraine read over my shoulder and handed the phone back like it was sharp. That isn't help, she said. That's management. A part of me wanted to accept it just to end the tension. If I went along, my kids could tell themselves they'd handled it responsibly. No one would have to sit with the fact that I was hurt. That's the kind of bargain pride offers. Disappear quietly, and you won't embarrass anyone. I could say yes, I admitted. Make it easy. Lorraine looked at me then, really looked. If you make yourself smaller to keep other people comfortable, she said, you'll vanish while you're still alive. The words hit because they sounded true. My father had vanished that way, alive, present, but already gone inside. I'd promised myself I wouldn't. I stood up, hands in my pockets. Why are you doing this? I asked. You barely know me. Lorraine's gaze didn't flinch. Because I watched my husband turn into a plan, she said. And I promised myself I'd never let another man sit alone with that kind of cold. I walked home with that sentence in my chest. Tommy's truck was in my driveway. He was on the porch, shoulders tight, like he'd been rehearsing what to say. When he saw me, relief flashed, then anger. Don't let them do it, he said. Don't let them put you somewhere. I stopped on the step below him. You didn't answer my calls for months, I said quietly. So why now? Tommy's jaw worked. Because I can't live with myself if I don't show up, he admitted. And because I'm scared this is a test. A test, I repeated, and it stung more than I expected. He ran a hand over his face. I know how it sounds. But Dad, part of me thinks you're hurting, and part of me thinks you're trying to make us feel it too. I looked at him the way I used to look at lumber before a cut, measuring, deciding. Maybe I don't know how to ask for help without making it a lesson, I said. Maybe that's my sin. Tommy swallowed. Then let me help without making me prove I'm worthy. And there was my choice, right there in my kitchen, keep control and keep the mask on, or accept help that might be guilt instead of love. I wanted purity. I wanted a son who stayed for the right reasons. Life doesn't hand you that at 70. It hands you imperfect people and asks if you can live with the truth. I was about to answer when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I remembered Lorraine's warning about vanishing. I picked up. Mr. Harris? A man asked. This is Daniel Price from Price and Leland. I represent your late wife's estate. We need to speak with you urgently about a document that's been requested. Tommy froze. Estate? He mouthed. Tomorrow morning, the lawyer added. 9 o'clock. It's important. My throat tightened, because in that one word I felt the next wave coming. If lawyers were involved, my children wouldn't be talking about feelings or benches or assisted living. They'd be talking about money. And Tommy had just heard enough to know I wasn't telling him everything. He watched my face like a man bracing for the truth. At 8:41 a.m. I sat in a leather chair that wasn't mine, staring at my own name on heavy paper, and I realized something. The moment a lawyer enters your family story, love gets quieter. A suit and a letterhead change the air. If you're a man in your 50s or 60s listening to me, you know that chill, how people turn Dad into a plan. Tommy drove because my hands wouldn't stop trembling on the wheel. He tried to sound casual, but his eyes kept searching my face. So, Mom left something? He asked. Your mom was organized, I said, which was true and useless. The real question was whether I'd admit what I'd done, pretend I was broke just to see who would stay. Pride told me to keep control. Loneliness told me to stop hiding. Daniel Price was younger than my oldest son, crisp in a gray suit, voice polite in that careful way professionals use when the truth might hurt. He slid a folder toward me. Mr. Harris, he said, your wife amended her trust 2 years before her passing. It remains confidential unless you choose otherwise, but a copy has been requested. Requested by who? I asked. Your daughter Marlene, he said. She cited concerns about your finances and long-term care. Tommy's jaw tightened. Daniel continued. We also received an inquiry from your son Richard about assisted living options. The words sounded like cold tiles. Options. Facilities. Care. Nice language for access. Then Daniel placed a sealed envelope on the desk. Ellen's handwriting, Henry, when you feel alone. My throat closed. I opened it anyway. Ellen didn't write poetry. She wrote the truth. She said she'd watched me pay for peace, watched me turn generosity into a shield. She said our children were good people, but we'd trained them to expect rescue. Then she wrote one line that hit harder than Dana's, Burden, if you ever wonder who loves you, stop buying the answer. Daniel cleared his throat. The trust is intact, he said gently. You are secure. Your wife also required that any large disbursement beyond routine gifts needs your written consent. Tommy looked at me, eyes sharp now. Dad, he said low, are you actually broke? I had one breath to choose. Tell him and risk making him part of it. Lie and keep him at arm's length like everyone else. Lorraine's voice came back to me. If you're looking for love, you might only find guilt, and Ellen's lines sat like a weight in my pocket. No, I said. I'm not broke. Tommy's face tightened. So you let them, it wasn't a game. I snapped, then softened. It was fear. Outside, the winter light made everything look honest. My phone buzzed. Marlene, we need to meet tonight. This is serious. Tommy read it and muttered. They smell money. On the drive home we passed a bakery, and through the window I saw Lorraine with a paper bag, laughing with the clerk like the world still had ordinary mornings. She caught my eye and gave a small wave, no questions, no management. Just a human gesture. It steadied me more than it should have. That night we met at Marlene's dining table. Rick came with Dana. Dana came with a folder. People don't bring folders when they want their father, they bring them when they want leverage. Marlene started soft. Dad, we're worried. We want you protected. Rick cut in. This isn't about feelings. We need clarity. Dana slid her folder forward. We researched facilities. Good ones. I stayed quiet and let them fill the room with their version of concern. That was my choice, rescue them from discomfort with the truth, or let them talk until their real priorities showed. So, Marlene said, tapping her pen, what resources do you actually have? If you can't contribute, we have to decide how to split responsibility. Split responsibility. Like I was a bill. I asked. Has anyone here asked me how I'm sleeping? A pause. Rick shifted. Dana answered too fast. We can't be expected to cover everything. Marlene nodded, calm as a spreadsheet. We assumed you had saved enough, she said, and then the knife. We assumed you wouldn't be a burden. Tommy pushed back his chair. Stop saying that, he snapped. He's not a burden. He's Dad. Rick's eyes narrowed. Relax. We're being realistic. Tommy shot back. You call the lawyer. Marlene lifted her hands. We did what anyone would do. I looked at them and saw my own habits staring back, how I'd always paid to avoid hard talks, and how they now used practical to avoid being human. The room felt suddenly smaller, like the air had been taxed. Here was my next choice: end it with a grand reveal and watch them scramble, or draw a line that didn't depend on money at all. I stood. The chair legs scraped loud against the floor. You want clarity? I said. Here it is. I'm not moving anywhere tonight. And I'm not discussing numbers with people who haven't asked me once if I'm scared. Marlene's face fell. Dad, no, I said, steady now. If you want to be my children, be my children. If you want to manage me, hire someone. Dana leaned toward Rick and murmured, thinking I wouldn't hear. This is exactly why we needed a plan. Olders still work. I walked out before my hands started shaking again. In the car, Tommy climbed into the passenger seat, breathing hard. Are you going to tell them the truth? He asked. Across the street, under a street lamp, Lorraine stood with her scarf pulled tight, not waiting, not calling, just existing like a quiet option I hadn't earned. I don't know, I told my son. And that answer scared me, because it meant my next move wasn't about money or tests. It was about whether I still wanted a family that only knew how to love me when I behaved. My phone buzzed again, then again, messages stacking like bills. A new thread appeared, this time with an unfamiliar number included. Daniel Price. Marlene had looped the attorney into the family chat. Marlene wrote, Dad refused to cooperate. We need guidance on next steps. Rick replied, if he won't share information, we may have to protect him from himself. Dana added, conservatorship? That word hit like a slap. Protect him from himself. Like I was a drunk uncle, not the man who paid for half their adult lives. Tommy read over my shoulder, his face straining. They can't do that, he said. They can try, I answered, and my voice sounded older than I felt. Here was the brutal choice I hadn't expected: reveal everything right now and stop the legal talk, or stay silent and watch whether their concern would go as far as taking my autonomy. If I revealed it, I'd win the moment, and lose the truth forever. If I stayed quiet, I might lose something else. Tommy grabbed my arm. Dad, say the word and I'll tell them to back off. But you can't just sit there. I looked at him, my imperfect son, the only one who'd shown up, and I realized I was asking him to carry my mess. Ellen's letter crinkled in my pocket. Stop buying the answer. I'm not going to fight them with money, I said. Not tonight. Tommy stared, hurt and furious at once. So what? We let them treat you like a case file. I swallowed. We let them show us who they are, I whispered. And the moment I said it, I felt the ground shift under my feet, because I wasn't sure anymore whether I was brave, or just stubborn enough to burn my own bridge to keep warm. At 4:17 a.m. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a legal word on my screen, conservatorship, and a cold cup of coffee I didn't remember pouring. When you reach my age, you think you've seen every kind of betrayal. But there's a special kind that comes wrapped in concern. It doesn't shout. It signs papers. And it terrified me more than being broke ever could, because it wasn't my money they were reaching for first. It was my right to be myself. I spent the next hour doing something I hadn't done in years. I wrote a list. Not numbers. Names. At the top, what do I want? Then I stared until my eyes burned. On the drive to Daniel's office, I kept seeing Ellen the way she was in our last year, sitting on the same chair at our kitchen table, folding letters, labeling envelopes with that quiet patience that made me feel safe. She used to say, Henry, people can love you and still be selfish. Back then I didn't want to hear it. I wanted to believe effort guaranteed loyalty. That morning, with my knuckles white on the steering wheel, I finally understood what she meant. I wanted my children to love me. But I also wanted something harder, to stop living like love had to be purchased. And there was my choice, sitting there like a tool left out in the rain. I could end this today with one phone call, tell them I wasn't broke, show them the trust, shut down the legal talk. I'd win. Or I could let them keep walking forward and see how far they'd go when they thought there was nothing to gain. The truth is, I didn't trust myself to choose that without turning mean. So I called Daniel Price at sunrise. He met me at his office at 9, crisp suit, careful voice. "Mr. Harris," he said, "if your children are discussing conservatorship, document everything. You are not obligated to disclose financial details." He paused. "What do you want to do?" "One meeting," I said. "Neutral ground. No spouses. No folders." Daniel nodded. "I can sit in as a witness. Not as a weapon." I sent a message to all three. "Please come to Daniel Price's office at 6 p.m. tonight. Face to face. No spouses." Then I texted Tommy, "Come early. I might need you." Tommy arrived at 5, shoulders tight. "Are you going to tell them?" he asked. "I'm going to tell the truth," I said. "All of it." "That still sounds like a test." "It started as fear," I told him. "I'm ending it as a boundary." Marlene came first, alone for once, hair perfect, smile practiced. Rick arrived 10 minutes later, jaw set, like he'd already decided the ending. Their eyes flicked to Tommy the way people look when a witness shows up. Daniel offered seats. I didn't. "You wanted clarity," I said. "Here it is. I am not broke. Your mother's trust is intact. I can pay for my care. I can pay for anything you're quietly counting right now." Marlene's face shifted, relief first, then anger. "You lied?" Rick's eyes narrowed. "So you set us up?" "No," I said. "I stopped being the solution. And I listened." Daniel slid printed screenshots across the desk. The word conservatorship sat there in black ink like a bruise. "You called me a burden," I said, calm. "You brought lawyers into my life before you asked if I was scared." Rick leaned forward. "Dad, you don't understand how it sounded. You said you might need help. We have families." "I had a family too," I answered. "And I didn't make you earn my concern." Tommy spoke from beside me, rough and honest. "I wasn't good either," he said. "I stayed away because it was easier to assume Dad would be fine. I used his strength as an excuse. So if this is about handing out medals, I don't deserve one." Marlene's voice trembled. "We were trying to protect you. Then you would have asked how I was sleeping," I said. "Not what I was worth." I pulled Ellen's letter from my coat pocket. "Your mother wrote this before she died. She told me to stop buying the answer. I didn't listen until now." Rick stared at the carpet. Marlene blinked hard. "So what happens now?" Rick asked. Here was my final choice. Punish them with money, make them beg, feel powerful for once. Or do something harder, draw a line and still leave the door unlocked. "I'm not disowning anyone," I said. "But I am changing the rules. I won't give money when what you really want is distance. If you want me in your life, you show up. You call. You don't manage me." Marlene swallowed. "And if we don't? Then you'll still be my children," I said. "But you won't be my plan," Daniel added. "Mr. Harris has amended his directives. Any attempt at conservatorship without medical cause will be contested." Marlene flinched. Then I turned to Tommy. "Your mother wanted generosity to go where it was met with presence," I said. "Not performance." Tommy shook his head. "Dad, I don't want, I know," I said. "That's why you're getting it." Daniel slid a sealed document toward him, the deed to my small rental property, enough to steady Tommy's life without turning him into a prince. Tommy's hands shook. "I don't deserve this." "Neither did I deserve to be called a burden," I said. "This isn't a reward. It's an investment in a relationship that might be real." Marlene stood abruptly. "So you're buying him?" I looked at her and felt something go still. "No," I said. "I'm choosing him. There's a difference." When it ended, my older 2 children left with stiff goodbyes that sounded like business. Tommy stayed behind, eyes wet, embarrassed by it. He didn't hug me. He just stood close, like a man learning a new language. Outside, the evening air had that clean bite that makes you feel awake. Lorraine was across the street near the park entrance, watching without intruding. She didn't ask. "Did you win?" she asked. "Are you okay?" That question nearly broke me. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I'm not disappearing." Lorraine nodded once. "Then come walk." After Tommy and I left, my phone buzzed again. A new message from Rick: "We'll discuss this with counsel." Marlene followed: "Dad, this doesn't have to get ugly." The words made my stomach tighten, because they weren't about my feelings, they were about control. I looked at Tommy and saw the question in his eyes: "Are we really doing this?" I didn't answer out loud. I just kept walking beside him, listening to our footsteps, wondering if drawing a boundary was the same thing as starting a war. We walked under the streetlights, two older people moving slowly, not trying to fix each other. For once, I could breathe for free. My kids didn't transform in a single night. Some wounds don't. But something did change. I stopped confusing money with love. If you're my age and you're listening, here's the only moral I trust now. Don't wait until you're a situation to find out who treats you like a person. And if you've been buying the answer, like I did, have the courage to stop. The silence that follows is brutal. But it's honest. And honesty at 70 is a kind of wealth no one can take from you.